manipulation, jealousy, and a massacre that shook America. The Romeoville tragedy. In a quiet suburb just outside of Chicago, a family of four lived peacefully, no drama, no enemies. Then, without warning, they vanished from this world. On September 17, 2023, police responded to a welfare check at 512 Concord Avenue. Inside, they found a chilling scene. Zoraida Bartolomei, her husband Alberto Rolon, and their two young sons, Adriel, 9, and Diego, 7, had all been brutally murdered. There were no signs of forced entry, no weapon at the scene, but the walls were riddled with bullet holes. Even their 3 dogs were executed. This was no random act of violence. It was cold, calculated, and deliberate. At first, there were no clear leads, but surveillance footage and GPS data soon pointed to a dark-colored Chevrolet Equinox spotted near the scene around the time of the murders. The car was registered to Nathaniel Huey Jr, a 32-year-old technician with no serious criminal history. But he wasn't alone. With him that night was 50-year-old Ermelinda Palomo, his fiancée, a woman with a broken heart and a grudge. Neither of them cooperated with the investigation. They said nothing, offered no explanation. Their silence spoke volumes, as if they'd written the script for this twisted tragedy themselves. And then, the past began to unravel. Nathaniel had been having an affair with Zoraida, a married woman. When Alberto found out, he confronted Nathaniel, warned him to stay away. But Nathaniel couldn't let go. And Ermelinda, the woman who should have walked away, chose to stay. Chose to manipulate. Chose revenge. Detectives believe it was Ermelinda who lured Nathaniel to the house that night. She didn't pull the trigger, but she helped make the massacre happen. This wasn't about money. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was obsession, jealousy, a slow-burning madness that finally erupted in silence. And as the case closed, one haunting truth remained. Love the wrong person and let hate take the wheel, and you might not only destroy yourself, but drag innocent lives into hell with you. The beginning of a nightmare. Romeoville, Illinois, a quiet town just 40 minutes from downtown Chicago. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name. The kind of town where people leave their doors unlocked without a second thought. But on the night of September 17, 2023, that peace shattered. Around 8 p.m., local police received 2 separate calls, one from Zoraida Bartolomei's mother and another from her sister. Zoraida, 32, lived with her husband Alberto Rolon, 38, and their 2 young sons, Adriel, 9, and Diego, 7. Zoraida was known for being in constant contact with her family. But that day, she didn't respond to a single message or phone call. That was already unusual. Even more alarming, Alberto, a reliable employee who never missed work without notice, hadn't shown up that morning. No one knew where the family was. Concerned, the relatives drove to their home at 512 Concord Avenue. They knocked. No one answered. Anxiety grew by the minute. Police arrived at the house at 8:45 p.m. The front door was unlocked. The lights were off. The entire home was eerily silent. Officers used flashlights to peer through the windows. Inside, chaos. A toppled TV. Furniture overturned. It was clear something violent had happened here. Backup was called in immediately. Officers checked the backyard. And there, they made a disturbing discovery. 3 family dogs had been killed. They breached the back door. And inside, just down the hallway, they found Alberto dead from multiple gunshot wounds. In the master bedroom, it was even worse. Zoraida and her 2 sons, Adriel and Diego, were huddled in a corner, all shot to death, as if they had tried desperately to escape. Spent shell casings littered the floor. Bullet holes covered the walls. But no gun was found. The killer had brought their weapon and taken it with them. Strangely, there were no signs of forced entry. No broken locks. No damaged doors, which meant someone had likely let the killer in. Neighbors later reported hearing a loud noise around 3:30 a.m. Something they assumed was thunder. But in hindsight, it may have been something else entirely. Gunshots. A doorbell camera from a nearby house captured a black sedan circling the area around that time. No one recognized the car. This family had no enemies, no debt, no criminal history. They didn't own firearms. Zoraida and Alberto had both just received promotions at work. Their lives seemed to be heading in the right direction. So who could have done this? And why? Those questions marked the start of a complex investigation, a massacre with no clear motive, no survivors, no witnesses, and no murder weapon. To uncover the truth, detectives would have to dig into the quiet, everyday lives of a family that, on the surface, seemed perfectly ordinary. The investigation begins right after discovering the horrific crime scene. Romeoville police launched a full-scale investigation, combing through every piece of digital evidence available, from neighborhood security footage to automated license plate readers. Then came the first breakthrough. At exactly 3:17 a.m., right around the estimated time of the murders, a dark-colored Chevrolet Equinox was caught slowly circling the victim's neighborhood. Using LPR data, investigators tracked down the vehicle's owner, Nathaniel Huey Jr., 32 years old, living in Streamwood, nearly 60 miles from Romeoville. He had no serious criminal record and no known connection to the family. But the data didn't lie. Digging deeper, detectives pulled traffic camera footage, GPS logs from the Equinox's onboard system, and even cell phone data tied to Huey's movements. Everything lined up perfectly. Nathaniel had left his home in the middle of the night, driven directly to the crime scene, and then left, all within the same narrow window of time. But here's what made things even more alarming. Nathaniel wasn't alone. Further investigation revealed that Ermelinda Palomo, 50 years old, Huey's fiancée, had driven with him that night. She was the one behind the wheel when they approached the house in the early hours of September 16th. This wasn't a random drive. This wasn't a crime of impulse. It was starting to look like something planned, premeditated, and now, possibly involving a second suspect. The manhunt on September 18th, just one day after the murders, with two prime suspects identified, police paid a visit to both of their homes. They knocked. No one answered. So they waited, quietly watching the street, looking for any movement. That's when something strange happened. From the end of the block, a red Chevy Tahoe appeared. It slowly rolled toward Nathaniel's house, about to pull into the driveway, but suddenly stopped. Then it calmly turned around and parked across the street. It was subtle, but suspicious, as if the driver had spotted the police and decided to back off. What innocent person turns around and parks across the street when cops are standing outside their front door? The officers pivoted. Their next stop was Nathaniel's workplace, a company called Avant Engineering. And there it was, the same red Chevy Tahoe, sitting quietly in the parking lot. Then came Nathaniel. He walked straight toward the vehicle, leaned into the driver's side window, and spoke to whoever was inside. Before officers could approach, the car pulled away, and so did Nathaniel. This wasn't a high-speed chase. No sirens, no collisions, just two police cruisers following from a distance. While the Tahoe kept making random turns, switching directions, as if the people inside knew they were being tailed. What made it even stranger? Police hadn't even made contact yet. No confrontation, no accusation. So why were they acting like they were on the run? Eventually, the decision was made to split up. In a matter of hours, both suspects were caught in two different places. Nathaniel was stopped near his job site. Ermelinda was taken into custody at home. As detectives approached, they didn't sugarcoat it. No friendly questions, no small talk, just one cold, direct sentence: "We're investigating a murder." Neither of them said a word. No denial, no shock, no reaction. And in cases like this, silence often speaks louder than a confession. The connection to the victims: once Nathaniel Huey Jr. and Ermelinda Palomo were taken into custody, investigators began digging into their relationship with the family that had just been murdered. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. Ermelinda had been married before. She had children. She divorced. Then sometime around 2015, she met Nathaniel while they were both working at the same bar. She was a server. He worked security. They started dating. It seemed like a normal relationship. But the deeper police looked, the darker it got. Nathaniel had a few brushes with the law, mostly minor traffic violations like driving under the influence and driving with a suspended license. But what really stood out was his paranoia. He believed people were watching him. He taped over his phone's camera. He covered the tiny indicator lights on his TV. And if anyone touched those defense mechanisms, he would fly into a rage. Ermelinda knew this. She had seen it up close, but for reasons only she understood. She stayed. Then came 2022, and everything began to unravel. That year, Nathaniel got a job at Avant Engineering, and that's where he met Zoraida Bartolomei, one of the victims. They began having an affair. Zoraida betrayed her husband, Alberto Rolon, and Nathaniel betrayed his fiancée, Ermelinda. Neither of them was particularly good at hiding it. It didn't take long for the affair to come to light. When Alberto found out, he was furious. He slashed the tires on Nathaniel's car and left a handwritten note with a chilling message: "Stay away from Zoraida." But Nathaniel didn't back off. He ignored the warning, as if it meant nothing. And what about Ermelinda? She knew. She was hurt. She was angry. But she still didn't leave him. This wasn't the first time Nathaniel had cheated. And deep down, she likely knew it wouldn't be the last, not unless something drastic happened. Something final. She could have walked away. But she didn't. And maybe that decision sealed the fate of an innocent family. The motive: once Nathaniel Huey Jr. and Ermelinda Paloma were in custody, detectives wasted no time. The interrogations began immediately. And the lies came just as fast. Ermelinda remained calm. She claimed she had only just learned about the affair between Nathaniel and Zoraida that very day. She said she had no reason to be angry, no reason to get involved. "I'm 50 years old," she said. "I don't have time for that kind of drama." It sounded mature, reasonable, but police weren't buying it, because they had already found old messages, texts Ermelinda had sent to Zoraida well before the murders, filled with jealousy, venom, and thinly veiled threats. In other words, she lied, and that wasn't all. Ermelinda also insisted that Nathaniel didn't own any real firearms. "He's into airsoft," she said. "He likes tactical gear, but he's never owned a real gun." She even tried to give him an alibi. "He was home with me that night. I'm 100% sure. My daughter even saw him. Trust me, this whole story doesn't make any sense." It would have been the perfect alibi if it weren't completely made up. The detectives turned up the pressure. "Are you involved in this? Are you hiding something? You realize we're going to go through your phones, your texts, your browser history, right? I don't want to be surprised later by some love triangle or a screaming match between the three of you. If there's something to say, now is the time to say it." But Ermelinda stayed cold. Unshaken, she repeated, "I don't know anything about her life. I never even spoke to her." As for Nathaniel, he was nervous, twitchy, sweating. He barely spoke during questioning, and when he did, he stammered. Especially when the topic turned to his phone. That's when detectives made their move. "You used Snapchat to message her, right? We just want to clear your name. Let us download the data. We'll give the phone back." But Nathaniel didn't hand it over. Instead, he asked if he could wipe the phone first. That wasn't about privacy. That was about guilt. Fortunately, police seized the phone before he could do anything. It had only been about 48 hours since the murders, not enough time for him to cover his tracks. And buried inside that device wasn't just GPS data or innocent chats. It was evidence of a motive. The messages Ermelinda had sent were vicious. Texts and Facebook messages to Zoraida, filled with rage and threats. "Stay away from my man. Don't talk to Nathaniel. I know you're sleeping with him. He's my fiancé. If you know what's good for you, stay away." She warned Zoraida that she was the one who could control Nathaniel, and if Zoraida didn't back off, she'd expose the affair to her family. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Ermelinda had also messaged Alberto, Zoraida's husband. She told him about the affair, not to help him, but to taunt him. She warned him that Nathaniel was dangerous, that if Alberto didn't put an end to the affair, something terrible could happen. It wasn't a threat, but it sounded like one. And in the world of homicide investigations, that's often more than enough. The fake assassin network, just when investigators thought they had a grip on the case, things took a dark and bizarre turn. It all began on April 18, 2022, when Nathaniel Huey Jr. unlocked his phone and found a strange message from an anonymous account. "No name, no profile picture. We know who you are. We're watching your every move." At first, Nathaniel thought it was some kind of prank, but then came another message, then another, then hundreds more. The sender claimed to be part of an international network of assassins and hackers with ties to Mexican and Bulgarian cartels. They claimed to know everything about Nathaniel, where he lived, who he worked with, who his friends were, and most importantly, the love triangle between him, Zoraida, and his fiancée, Ermelinda Paloma. The threats didn't stop. For over a year and a half, all the way up until 2 days after the murders on September 18, 2023, Nathaniel received messages from this so-called organization. They told him to end things with Zoraida, that he had to stay loyal to Ermelinda, that if he didn't comply, they would behead him cartel-style. And not just him, his family, and Zoraida's family too. The messages came through Facebook, social media, even SMS. The group gave Nathaniel a nickname, something like Ard Sudam ID, and began referring to him like a pawn in some dark operation. And then the messages spread. Zoraida received them. So did her husband, Alberto. Even Ermelinda claimed to be getting threats. Names like Turtle, Claudia, Lisa, messages in broken Spanish, some in Bulgarian. One text simply read, "Where's Nathaniel?" Nathaniel, a fan of airsoft and tactical gear, felt special, chosen, but also terrified. He truly believed this was real. And yet, he never broke things off with Zoraida. Eventually, the group claimed that an inside man was preparing to take him out. Nathaniel grew even more paranoid. But here's the chilling truth. There was no assassin network, no cartel, no hackers. It was all made up by Ermelinda Palomo. She knew Nathaniel was paranoid, that he had a soft spot for conspiracy, and she used it. She created a fictional criminal underworld to manipulate him, to control him. She Googled obscure terms like Argus, created dozens of fake accounts, burner numbers, anonymous emails, all designed to impersonate members of a made-up cartel from Mexico and Bulgaria. Some messages were written using bad Google Translate. She tried to sound like a mob boss. Sometimes it worked. Police later discovered search terms on her computer like Bulgarian military photos, how to access the dark web, apps to track your husband, Bulgarian slang for guns. She even gave the fake group a name, ECU, the Herlinda criminal universe, and messaged Nathaniel as if she were a mafia queenpin schooling her foot soldier. At first, the goal was simple, scare Nathaniel into dumping Zoraida. But when that failed, she shifted to Plan B, psychological warfare. She made him believe Zoraida was a threat, that Zoraida and her family were spies, dangerous people who needed to be eliminated. And Nathaniel obeyed. Even worse, Zoraida, the future victim, began receiving threats too. Terrified, she turned to the one man she thought could protect her, Nathaniel. She didn't know that he, too, was caught in a web of lies, and that the very person manipulating him was the woman sitting beside him. It was a masterclass in psychological control. Ermelinda didn't need a gun. She didn't need a knife. Just a phone and a chilling ability to lie. She created a fantasy world and made someone believe that murder was the only way to survive. This wasn't a movie. This was real life. And the scariest part? You don't need a real cartel to carry out a massacre. You just need someone patient and very, very good at deception. In the final weeks before the murders, something in Nathaniel changed. His relationship with Zoraida grew cold, distant. Zoraida didn't understand why. Why the man who once loved her wouldn't look her in the eye. Why he avoided her touch. Why he left work early and stayed home for days. She didn't know Nathaniel was convinced she was trying to kill him. In his paranoia, he began preparing for something unthinkable. Together with a so-called gang member, likely just Ermelinda again, in disguise, Nathaniel plotted the murder of Zoraida's family. He scouted the house like a predator, checking cameras, memorizing entry points, buying new clothes, and discussing the plan with Ermelinda in chilling detail. She didn't stop him. She encouraged him. On the night of the murders, Nathaniel climbed the fence, slashed the screen door to make it look like a break-in. He shot Alberto 5 times the moment they crossed paths in the hallway. Zoraida locked herself in a room, clutching her 2 children, crying, begging. But Nathaniel didn't stop. He fired through the door, then walked in and ended all 3 lives, convinced it was better for them to die than live without each other. After the killings, he ran to his car and turned on the radio. On the other end was Ermelinda waiting, calm, as if they'd just completed a mission. But Nathaniel made a mistake. He left behind 2 phones, Zoraida's and Alberto's, containing every message, every plan, every threat. When police extracted the data, they uncovered everything: the fake assassin network, the fake names, the fake threats, and the real mastermind behind it all, Ermelinda Palomo. The aftermath on September 19th, the day after police brought them in for questioning, Ermelinda and Nathaniel stopped cooperating. They lawyered up, then casually went grocery shopping together. Later that day, Nathaniel confessed to his mother that he had killed a family. The next morning, Ermelinda vanished. Her family reported her missing, fearing she had been kidnapped by Nathaniel. A manhunt began. It didn't take long. That very afternoon, authorities tracked the couple down in Oklahoma, nearly 1,000 kilometers from the crime scene. And what they found was chilling. Surveillance footage showed the 2 shopping together, looking relaxed, even happy. When police moved in, Nathaniel hit the gas and fled at high speed. The chase ended in tragedy. The car slammed into a highway barrier and burst into flames. When officers reached the vehicle, the scene was horrific. Ermelinda had been shot once, point blank. Nathaniel had turned the gun on himself. Both were dead. Right there, on a cold, empty stretch of Oklahoma highway. Neighbors were stunned. To them, Nathaniel was quiet, polite, a decent guy. No one had seen this coming, but none of that mattered anymore. Everyone involved was now dead. There would be no trial, no answers, no justice. What began as a web of lies, fake messages, fake threats, a fake international crime syndicate, ended in a real massacre of 4 innocent people. And in the end, all that remained was the horror. Analysis and commentary investigators were clear. This wasn't just a love triangle. It was a psychological operation, carefully planned, strategically executed, and it ended in blood. Ermelinda Palomo didn't need a weapon. She used social media as a dagger, forging dozens of fake accounts, sending anonymous threats, posing as assassins, building an entire fictional universe when Nathaniel Huey Jr. was the pawn. This is brainwashing 2023 style. No chains, no torture, just a phone. And a fear that grew louder every day. Detectives noted, if friends, family, or co-workers had noticed something was off with Huey, if even one person had spoken up, this might have ended differently. But no one did. No one asked. No one intervened. And now, for people are dead. Nathaniel wasn't just followed. He was isolated, threatened, manipulated into believing he was being hunted by an international death squad. Experts call this extreme gaslighting, where a person is so mentally trapped that violence becomes the only way out. Palomo never raised a hand. She didn't need to. She created enemies that didn't exist, sent messages from imaginary characters, fabricated a fake global crime syndicate, all to control one man's mind. And she succeeded. This case isn't just about murder. It raises a chilling question. How many people are trapped in toxic relationships like this? And no one knows? Psychologists have one warning. Pay attention. Speak up, because sometimes a simple question could stop a massacre. Community reaction. The internet did not stay silent. People mourned deeply for the Bartolomei family, especially the 2 innocent children. They were heartbroken, angry, and they kept asking the same question. Why? Why the kids? They had nothing to do with the lies, with the twisted jealousy, with the imaginary hitmen dreamt up by a woman obsessed with control. Their deaths became a wake-up call. Domestic violence doesn't always start with fists. Sometimes it starts with a threat, a message, a subtle shift in someone's behavior, the kind of signs we often overlook until it's too late. Social media was meant to connect us, but in the hands of a manipulator, it became a silent weapon. A fake account, a threatening message, a make-believe organization, and suddenly, you can't tell what's real. And what's psychological warfare? That's what killed the Rolon family. So don't dismiss the red flags. Emotional control, manipulation, passive threats, or that quiet fear when you're alone with someone who should love you. They're not just moods. They could be warning signs of something far darker. We need to talk. We need to educate our communities on emotional abuse and mental health, because a single warning can save an entire family from tragedy. This case was the result of jealousy wrapped in manipulation, coercion, and engineered paranoia. Ermelinda Palomo may not have pulled the trigger, but according to police, she wrote the code and programmed Nathaniel Huey Jr. to believe murder was the only way out. They had chances to stop, but neither of them did. And now, for lives are gone in a quiet suburban home in Illinois. Because of something no one could see, psychological control. Sometimes monsters don't have claws. Sometimes they just whisper the right lies at the right moment into someone who's already cracked. You think it could never happen to you? Maybe. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to hit follow so you never miss another chilling true story. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.